So I want to talk about, I'm not totally sure how I'm going to articulate this. I don't even like the words I'm about to use, but I want to talk about how not to be a victim to the turnkey rental property process. And the word victim is not at all, it's not the right, I mean, it's actually technically the right word, but it kind of suggests what I'm not trying to suggest. The turnkey rental property process by itself, because it makes it sound like a scam, right? It's not a scam, so it's not about falling victim to a scam, but what it's about is taking a back seat to the whole process. So one of the biggest problems with turnkey rental properties, and it doesn't sound obvious at all, but I've seen it over the years, is turnkey rental properties are advertised as being hands-off rental properties. I personally am one of the culprits of calling them that. And it's kind of what I had in my head about them when I started buying them. And the reality is, the more accurate phrasing would be they're the most hands off for a rental property that you can probably be when you actually own, buy real property versus like notes or syndications or whatever. The problem with that messaging that I've seen over the years, and it is consistent, and I think I've probably brought this up in a lot of other videos, but maybe in relation to other stuff or whatever, but what I've seen the messaging of turnkeys do is put the idea in people's heads that they can literally just kind of hang out in the back seat of the process and the journey and be like, it's all taken care of for me. That's true. Most of it's taken care of taken care of for you. However, you have to stay on top of the due diligence. And just, I have this theory that if there's humans in the equation, there's room for error. So you as a turnkey investor need to have a mentality of you wear the pants. They're doing all the work, but really you're still the boss because this is your investment. If anything goes wrong, guess what? It's on you. And so because of that, it makes you the boss. And this is not like, a message to say you can be a jerk to everyone and boss everyone around. Like, be a nice boss, but you are the boss. If anyone at any point in time, either when you're buying the turnkey rental property or once you own it, if anyone ever starts giving you the runaround, if they stop performing, if they stop whatever, or they try and slide something past you, it's up to you to have that eyeball open and be willing to do something about it. I think in other videos I've talked about. I remember one time checking in with a turnkey investor. I think it was maybe like a year or two after he had closed on a property. I don't even remember in which market. And I oftentimes check in. I was like, hey, how's everything going with the property now that's been quite a bit of time to, how's it going? And he said, well, it's mostly going good, but my cash flow hasn't been what I expected. And I said, why? And he said, well, there's been a lot of repairs. And I was like, how many repairs on a turnkey property in 2 years? And he said, well, one of the biggest problems was the dishwasher exploded and flooded the floors, and I had to pay $7,000 for new flooring. And my first thought was, did you call your insurance company? And he was like, oh, no, I didn't really think to do that. And it was such a good example of, yes, the hard stuff is done for you, but you've got to stay on top of stuff. How his property manager didn't suggest, hey, make sure you call your insurance company, because a flooded dishwasher and flooded floors is like one of the easiest claims possible because it's legit. So, the property manager should have suggested that potentially. But again, it's this mindset of being willing to accept the fact that you're the boss. Like, you dictate the future of this property. Yeah, something's out of your control, but you have to be willing to do this. So what I really want to talk about with that little preface is how not to be in victim mode of this process. So if someone starts giving you the runaround, if things aren't performing like they should, if you're buying a turnkey rental property and the condition's not what it should be, do something about it. I am constantly talking to people who sometimes this is drastic, because I help people buy turnkey rental properties, and sometimes it's as drastic as they never mouthed a word of any challenges or any concerns or anything, and next thing I know is they're pulling out of the deal, and I'm like, well, what happened? And they tend to list off like a list of things that were concerns to them. And I'll ask questions like, well, did you ask the seller about this? Did you get confirmation of the repairs? Did you, if tenants aren't in when they should be and you're about to close, did you talk to everyone about that and like purposefully not close on the property until that tenant's in as promised? And they're like, well, no, not really. And I hear this time and time again. Again, the more drastic version, so in thinking of buying a turnkey rental property, the more drastic version is they just cancel the deal and lose out on a potentially really good property. Now, not to say some things aren't, it warrants getting out of the property 100%. But what I see most often is that they don't actually get that confirmation that, yes, this is an official problem. Yes, this isn't getting fixed. Yes, whatever. And they just make an assumption and they bolt. So the couple examples I want to give to how not to be a victim to the turnkey rental property process, it's not an all-inclusive list, but I'm hoping I'll kind of give you an idea of when and what things to look for that would warrant you stepping in and saying, no, this is how this is going to happen. So one example I kind of suggested was the property condition. The inspection report on a turnkey rental property can be incredibly stressful because it is way longer and it looks way more dramatic than you're expecting for a turnkey rental property, because you're getting a fully rehabbed property. So in theory, the inspection report should have nothing, but when it has 7 pages of dramatic issues, it's intimidating. Check in the comments. I'll leave a link for the video on how to deal with that property inspection. It's a completely normal situation. So anyways, so you get the property inspection and certain things are there. Let's say some things aren't even up to code. So no problem. You email the seller and say, hey, these things all need to be fixed. And basically, especially like code violations, if those things aren't fixed prior to closing, guess who's not closing? You should not. So the seller says, yeah, we'll fix everything. And then somewhere along the lines, you don't get verification of that. A couple things could happen. Either you later on panic thinking, oh my gosh, there's code violations, I have to get out of here, without ever actually giving the seller the chance to remedy it, because it's what repairs are for. Another situation would be letting the seller convince you to close on the property without ever either A, doing those repairs, or showing you proof of those repairs. You don't want to wait until after closing, because if those repairs aren't done and that seller just kind of bolts, it's on you at that point. So you want to make sure, this is such an advantage of buying turnkey rental properties, you can verify everything before you close on it, i.e. take the risk. So, those are a couple scenarios that could happen with a property inspection report. Either they convince you to close without either fixing it or proving it, or you don't wait until they show you verification. I've seen situations where there was a code violation. I'm just using those as a more clear repair example. It could be the roof is bad or a hot water heater needs replacing or whatever, but let's call it code violation. I've seen it where they addressed the seller and said, hey, the inspection report found this, it's a code violation. And the seller says, yeah, I'll fix it. And before the seller even has a chance to send the proof of the repair and cleaning off the code violation, the buyer says, oh, no, there's code violations, I can't do this. And they bail. And I'm like, but the seller just fixed it. So it's not letting other people wear the pants in this relationship. You wear the pants in this relationship because you're the boss. So another example, thinking of buying a turnkey rental property, is some turnkey rental properties sell properties without tenants, and they will tell you as such, like, hey, that is kind of what we do, that's our model. In that case, fine. But if it's advertised that there should be a tenant in your property before you close, and you're creeping up on closing and there's still not a tenant, put the halt on everything. Say, hey, there's no tenant, and I was promised a tenant, so we're going to have to figure something out. Be willing to do that. Same example, I see so many people that either close without the tenant and they're like, well, I don't want to bother them. Bother them. You're the boss. Plus it's not a big bother anyways to ask a question. I've also known people to cancel the contracts. They're like, well, there wasn't a tenant in place. And I said, well, did you talk to the seller about rescheduling closing, postponing until the tenant was in? And they're like, well, no. The only reason I get agitated about it is because I don't ever want a turnkey buyer, investor, because I'm a turnkey investor and I support turnkey investors. I don't want anyone to ever feel like the process is out to get them. But at the same time, I see so many people not willing to step up, put their foot down, wear the pants in the relationship, and stay out of the back seat. And again, this is not an invite to just become a raging asshole to all the turnkey providers and be like, you said this. Keep your wits about you, but don't not say anything. And then the last caveat about this, I'm pretty sure I have a whole video on this. I'll include the link in the comments, is If someone's helping you buy that turnkey rental property, so let's say you're working with a turnkey marketing company or turnkey promoter or whatever, if you're finding challenges or you're having frustrations and you're not, you are kind of fearful or whatever of bringing it up to the turnkey provider, talk to the people who are there to support you. The turnkey marketing promoter companies, that's what they do. They're there to support you. That's their only job. So don't be shy about demanding what it is that you were advertised. If the numbers are different, if the conditions different, if the tenants aren't in, if you have a question about anything, reach out to them and ask, because what quite often, and I'd say in most cases happens, is that there's a misunderstanding somewhere, and in whatever way it has an easy resolution, whether that is just clarifying or confirming with the turnkey provider exactly what's going on, or getting confirmation of the repair, or whatever it is. But don't not reach out for support, because this is not a perfect process. I would love if turnkeys were perfect. People call them perfect all the time. Guess what? They're not. Again, because there's humans involved. So don't let yourself be a victim to the turnkey rental process. This is kind of a selfish request, actually, because what happens is when people let themselves be a victim to the process, they don't do very basic things that could have prevented the whole hoopla of drama. Drama, not necessarily their fault, but a whole hoopla of nonsense. And then it makes turnkeys look bad, and it makes the seller look bad, and it makes all of us in the equation look bad, because most often in the dramatic case where they leave the contract, get rid of the property, they leave with a sour taste in their mouth about turnkeys. And that's not fair to the turnkey's reputation. Like, it's a really sustainable, good way for people to invest. It's not perfect, but all things given, it's an awesome option for people. And turnkeys already have to fight a bad reputation sometimes, and this just doesn't help. So you at least have to put the effort forward. If it ends up being if you work with a terrible provider and they end up being a total sham, cool. But like, go a little bit further with confirming everything, and don't let yourself just be a victim to the process.